What's up, guys? Welcome back in the Brand Dog Sports, and the wait is finally over. College football is here, and we have one of the most highly anticipated week ones of college football that I can remember. We got big time matchups all over the place, new quarterbacks in new places, new coaches in new places. We have a very, very exciting week one on our hands. So let's get right into it with the three games this week that I'm looking forward to the most. All right, for the second game that I'm going to be covering is going to be LSU versus Clemson. This is a top 10 matchup between two of the very best quarterbacks in the country, and what I expect will be a crazy environment down at Death Valley in Clemson. The battle here is really going to be, again, like the last game, between the two quarterbacks, Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik. These are two very experienced veteran quarterbacks who I expect to both honestly compete for the Heisman this year. They both have very good teams. Clemson, in my opinion, has one of the best rosters. They're returning almost all of their talent from a year ago. They have one of the best wide receiver corps in the nation. And then LSU, kind of the same thing. They're returning a lot of talent on offense, especially in the wide receiver room. So I expect both these teams to be very good, and I expect both these quarterbacks to compete for the Heisman this year. But I really think this game is going to be won or lost between the offensive line of LSU against the defensive line at Clemson. So this is going to be a pretty unique matchup. You have practically a brand new offensive line for LSU. They're not really returning many starters from even a year ago that honestly already kind of struggled against what will be one of the best defensive lines in college football, if not the best defensive line in college football at Clemson. If LSU can figure out a way to find a run game, which is something they really struggled with last year, I think this will allow Garrett Nussmeier to settle into the game. If they're able to run the ball, kind of the same thing for Jackson Armour. If they're able to run the ball and get into 2nd and 5, 3rd and 2, this allows Garrett Nussmeier to kind of settle into the game, which he doesn't really need to do, but they're not asking as much of him as they did last year, which is kind of where he started making those poor decisions, created a higher turnover rate than what it really should have been because the offense wasn't able to find any balance. However, if this offense wasn't able to find any balance last year with an offensive line that should have been better, one of the best offensive tackles in college football, now in the NFL, Will Campbell, if they weren't able to run the ball this year, I don't see them being able to run the ball this year, especially against a Clemson defensive line that is probably the best in college football. I just think this Clemson defensive line is too talented. The LSU offensive line is too inexperienced in this type of environment, and I think they dominate this game, which really forces Garrett Nussmeier, similar to last year, to kind of make those poor decisions. I mean, when you're on 2nd and 10, 3rd and 7, in this type of environment, you feel like the game is on line. You have to force stuff. That's when you really start seeing these quarterbacks that, in my opinion, are really good, start to make these poor decisions because they're not put in the best positions to succeed. So I really think this Clemson defensive line will be able to dominate this game, forcing Garrett Nussmeier to make some poor decisions. And then I think Clemson really is able to pull away late in the second half. I think Clemson has a really good quarterback in Cade Klubnik, and a really good wide receiver core, like I said. And I think as the game goes on, Cade Klubnik's really going to be able to settle in, make simple decisions because he's not really going to have to do much because of how good his defense is. And I think they're able to pull away. And the week one woes continue for Brian Kelly and LSU, who haven't won a week one matchup since 2019. I think that continues. And I have Clemson winning this one 31-17. I really think they pull away late in the second half. And I have Clemson winning over LSU 31-17. All right, the third game that we have for us this week is a really exciting one. We have Miami versus Notre Dame. We have the Catholics versus the Convicts. This historic rivalry finally brought back. It'll be a Sunday matchup. All eyes will be on this game. There won't be any other college football games going on. Every single person that likes college football will be watching this game. It's another top 10 matchup also between two very historic teams. It'll be in Miami at Hard Rock Stadium. A very exciting game. So we have freshman quarterback C.J. Carr and a team that just played for a national championship. Yes, they lost to Ohio State, but they were in the national championship a year ago versus Carson Beck and what I expect to be another very exciting Miami offense, but probably with the struggling defense. Here's the big question for me, though. Is Carson Beck what we thought he was going to be last year? Because what we thought Carson Beck was going to be last year was a top 3 overall pick, the best quarterback in college football, a Heisman candidate. These are the things that we were talking about for Carson Beck before that season started. Also, is he healthy? I know we had that UCL injury in the SEC championship against Texas. Is he fully back, healthy, and has he had enough time to really get used to this offense? That's going to be a big question for me. If he is, Miami is going to be able to score with anyone. Similar to last year with Cam Ward. They're going to be able to score with any team in the entire country. They're going to be putting up 40, 50. This is the type of offense Miami can be if Carson Beck is fully healthy and if he's back to what we thought he was going to be last year. Then, another question I have for Miami is, can they stop Jeremiah Love? This is another Heisman candidate. This is the best running back in college football. Can they stop Jeremiah Love? If they do, and they force CJ Carr to have to go and win this game, I think they got a really good chance. CJ Carr is a freshman quarterback. Yes, he's talented, but in this type of situation, week one, freshman quarterback, I tend to lean to Carson Beck if they can get into sort of like a QB battle. However, both these things are probably very unlikely. I don't see that happening. I don't see Carson Beck being fully healthy and having enough time to really get used to this offense. And I don't really see anyone all season stopping Jeremiah Love, let alone a really poor Miami defense from a year ago. So I think both these things are very unlikely. I really think that Notre Dame is going to be able to rely on Jeremiah Love in this running game against a really bad defense from a year ago. And if they can do that, CJ Carr doesn't have to do anything. All he has to do is turn around and hand the ball off to the best running back in college football, really rely on that running game, and then just make the simple decisions. Don't do anything stupid. Don't force anything. Just make the simple decisions. If he's able to do that, I trust him. I trust Marcus Freeman to have coached him well enough to be able to make the smart decisions. Here's the only way Miami wins this game. If they can force a shootout. If Miami really can, which I know it's unlikely, if they really can stop Jeremiah Love and force CJ Carr to throw the ball, and they really get into this like shootout type of game where Notre Dame isn't able to control the clock, they're just going back and forth, I think I would trust Carson Beck more than I trust CJ Carr to win a game, to win a battle like that. However, like I said, I just struggle to see those things happening. I just really don't think Miami is ready yet on the defense side of the ball to compete with a team of Notre Dame's caliber, a team that just played in the national championship, a team that I think is kind of going under the radar still this offseason. I think this is going to be a very good football team again. Yes, they have a freshman quarterback, but they still have Jeremiah Love. And that's really going to allow CJ Carr to settle into these games, to settle into the season, and not have to really do too much. So I'm going to take Notre Dame and Jeremiah Love in this running game to beat Miami in a lower scoring game, but 27-20. All right, the final matchup that I'm going to be covering today is the most exciting of them all. It's going to be Ohio State versus Texas. You got number 1 versus number 3, and probably the most anticipated regular season game in over a decade. You got Arch Manning and the number 1 ranked Longhorns going into Columbus against the defending national champions and a team that just beat them in the playoffs just last year. So let's get into it because this is going to be a very, very exciting matchup. All right, the second matchup that I have for this game is going to be Ohio State's offensive line versus Texas's defensive line. This is a pretty new, unexperienced offensive line for Ohio State versus a very experienced and very good, one of the best in college football, defensive lines for Texas. I think when we look back on this game, this is going to be one of those battles where we go, oh, that's why Ohio State won, or oh, that's why Texas won. If Ohio State wins this battle, here's what it's probably going to look like. Ohio State is going to be able to run the ball first. If Ohio State is able to run the ball first, they're not going to allow Texas's defensive line, Texas's pass rush, which I believe is the best in college football, to really disrupt Julian Sayin. That allows Julian Sayin to settle in. That allows Julian Sayin to have stuff like 2nd and 5, 3rd and 2. A lot easier for a younger quarterback. And also, they're never getting into significant passing downs where Texas's pass rush, knows, hey, this is a passing down. They're passing it. So they're able to send blitzes. Colin Simmons is able to get in there and disrupt this game. For Texas's defensive line, what it's going to look like if they win. If Texas's defensive line stops the run game, Texas wins this game. Their pass rush is too good. Their pass rush is going to be able to get to Julian Sayin if they're in passing downs. But if Texas defensive line, if our interior can't stop the run game, I really think this allows Ohio State to have the advantage and Julian Sayin to really settle into this game, which I think is going to be very key for Ohio State. If Julian Sayin is able to get settled into this game, he's not getting sacked, he's not getting pressured, then they're going to have a very, very good chance to win this game. All right, the third and final key matchup I have in this game is probably going to be the biggest one. You have Jeremiah Smith versus Texas secondary. Look, say whatever you want about this game. Say whatever you want about Arch Manning. Jeremiah Smith is the best player in college football. If Ohio State is going to be able to find ways to get Jeremiah Smith the ball, they're probably going to win. But if Texas secondary plays this game similar to last year like they did against Jeremiah Smith, and yes, I know a lot of that was Jahdae Barron. However, I really trust Manny Muhammad to be able to cover Jeremiah Smith similar to what Jahdae Barron did last year. If Texas secondary is able to shut down Jeremiah Smith for like 3 yards like they did a year ago, or really anything under like 50, I think Texas has a really, really good chance to win this game. But if Ohio State is able to find unique ways to get Jeremiah Smith involved, if Ohio State is able to find ways to get Jeremiah Smith the ball, I really think they have a really good chance to win this game. All right, now that we got the matchup out of the way, let's get into the 3 keys for Texas to win this football game. The first one that I'm going to have is force Ohio State to pass. If they're able to force Ohio State to pass, this unleashes the pass rush, and this also forces Julian Sain to have to do more than what he probably is going to be able to do against this defense, against this secondary, against this pass rush. If they're able to stop the run, really force Julian Sain to win this game on his own, I don't think he's going to be able to do that, and I think Texas will win this game. The second key I'm going to have for Texas is to not force anything on offense. Arch Manning, Steve Sarkisian, play calling, making good decisions. If they're able to let this game come to them, which I think they're going to be able to because our defense is really good. Look, you don't have to score 30 points. You're not going to have to score 35 points to win this game. Don't force anything on offense. Let this game come to you, and I really think we'll be able to win this game. And then my third and final key for this is going to be win the field position battle. This is similar to just kind of letting the game come to you. If we're able to win the field position battle, which is something that's going to be very interesting this year. Last year, Texas special teams was not good. Was one of the very worst in the SEC, was one of the very worst in the country, especially when it came to punting. We got a new punter, the best punter out of the transfer portal. I think it's going to be really good. If we're able to win the field position battle, I think that also is going to help us win this game. All right, now I have 3 keys for Ohio State in order to win this game. The first one is pretty simple. It's going to be keep this crowd involved early. If they're able to keep this crowd involved the whole game. So let's say Ohio State gets out there and they go 3-0 on the first drive. And then we go down and we score. See, this kind of silences the crowd. If Ohio State is able to keep this crowd involved early against a younger, more unexperienced offensive line in Texas, I think they're going to have a good chance. Keep this crowd involved. It's going to be a crazy environment for Arch Manning in this offensive line to handle. So if they keep the crowd involved, don't make any mistakes early, I think they'll have a good chance. The second key that I have is going to be finding different ways to get Jeremiah Smith the ball. I said this earlier when I was looking at the matchup between Texas secondary and Jeremiah Smith. You have to find different ways to get Jeremiah Smith the ball. They learned last year, we're not going to let Jeremiah Smith get the ball in his usual ways. We're not going to allow you to just chunk it up to him and him catch it. That's not going to happen. You are going to have to find different, unique ways to get Jeremiah Smith the ball if you want the best player in college football to get involved, because we won't allow him to beat us by himself. Then the third key I have for Ohio State comes down to Caleb Downs, who is probably the best defensive player in college football. So Ohio State has 2 really good players. They have the best offensive player in college football and the best defensive player in college football in Caleb Downs. And that key is going to be similar to what they did last year, which is using Caleb Downs everywhere. So this means moving Caleb Downs up into the box, moving Caleb Downs back deep in his safety role. Use Caleb Downs everywhere. Make sure Texas has to identify Caleb Downs in a new spot almost every down, because then that's going to force Arch Manning to have to identify Caleb Downs, and that's when you have to start making mistakes because you're not seeing other people on the defense. All right, now let's get into my prediction for this game. Look, this game has the potential to be an instant classic. This game has the potential to live up to the hype as one of the greatest regular season college football games ever. And I tend to think it will be. I think it'll be a very close game. This is a crazy environment with 2 of the most evenly matched teams in the country. You really would struggle to find 2 teams that match each other as well as Texas does Ohio State. And we saw this in the college football playoff last year. Yes, Ohio State won by 2 scores, but really the only reason they won by 2 scores is because of that late strip sack fumble. it was a closer game than what the score says. So let's get into my prediction. Look, this is a very close game, like I said. These are two really good teams. I don't think the teams that we're going to see tomorrow are going to be the same teams that we're seeing later on the road in college football playoff and potentially even the national championship. I think these teams are definitely going to improve over the season. They have two young quarterbacks, so naturally they're going to keep getting better. But right now, I just think Texas has the better defense, and I tend to think Arch Manning is going to win his battle over Julian Sayin. Yes, we don't really know what either of these quarterbacks are going to look like tomorrow, but when you look at just talent, Arch Manning has too much talent, in my opinion, for Julian Sayin in this Ohio State defense. If Arch Manning is really going to live up to his potential, I think Texas is going to be able to win this game, which is why I lean Texas just slightly in a very, very low-scoring game, with Texas winning this game 24-20. Hook 'em.